The MLB offseason rumor mill is beginning to heat up, and the Philadelphia Phillies continue to hear their names attached to some of the top names on the market. Blake Snell has entered the conversation as a potential target for this team to add to their already strong pitching staff. We're going to break down what we know about the situation, who is attaching to these reports, and if it does make sense for this Phillies team. So to dive right into it, Luke Arcaini, I want to start off with this title here from our very own Anthony Sanfilippo, shout out to him, who writes the title of the article, "Some Baseball Executives Believe the Phillies Will Sign Two-Time Cy Young winner Blake Snell." And to add to this exactly, this did come with an anonymous offseason poll that a lot of executives seem to be pointing to this occurring. So Luke, do you buy this? Do you think this is just noise? And what is your level of desire for this to happen?
Yeah, this was a bit of a shocking one to me.
Yeah.
I didn't think the Phillies would really be sort of in the mix for a big time starter. But that's exactly what Blake Snell is.
Yeah.
He's a big name. He's an accomplished starter, and he's still got a lot of juice in him. He had a really good end to his 2024 season after having, I believe, like an 11 ERA in his first like 6 starts with the Giants last year. He obviously signed late after the whole Boris thing last offseason, but he is a very accomplished pitcher he's been on a few teams that have really sort of, I wouldn't say used him the right way.
Okay.
Quote unquote, the 2020 Rays for pulling him in game, I believe 5 or 6 of the World Series in the 5th inning. So this is definitely an interesting one. I think this could be a cool move for the Phillies if they really wanted to really get this team going, because that would be a massive upgrade to your starting rotation.
Yeah, absolutely there. And to add a little bit more context to things, do want to pull up the exact article, which is written. Another consideration is what it's going to take to sign him. Snell opted out of the final year of his contract with the Giants that would have paid him $30 million in 2025. That's not to say that he thinks he's worth more than $30 million a year for multiple years, but rather that his next contract will have a total value of more than $30 million over multiple years. So the opt-out was smart. Teams probably won't commit a long contract to Snell because of durability issues. He's only reached 180 innings in a season twice in his 9-year career, but could he get the same AAV as Aaron Nola, roughly $27 million a year over a shorter time frame, say 4 years with the team option beyond that? Yes. Also, what should be considered is the Phillies didn't seem to have any interest in Snell a season ago when he was coming off his second Cy Young award. The reason that seemed to be out there was because Snell had a propensity to not throw a ton of innings, and the Phillies president Dave Dombrowski prefers pitchers at the top of his rotation who are pitchers that give you length. Now, I do remember seeing a little bit of rumors as far as Blake Snell and the Phillies back last year. It might not have been anything concrete, and obviously that is not the way that things played out. But do you buy this as far as like, I guess my full question here is, we already know what is set as far as the top of the Phillies rotation, that there is Aaron Nola, there is Zack Wheeler, an incredibly strong year from Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, a bit more uncertainty there. Does it make sense to make this big of a splash? Is that the position to prioritize, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the position you should focus on, because it's not.
Yeah.
But I think they should have a bit of some sort of interest here, because there has been a lot of talk, and I don't know how much I love this, but it has been floating around. There's been a lot of Ranger Suarez trade,
Yeah.
sort of floats, and that's not from really any big time reporters. That's just sort of if it would make sense. I mean, he is going to be owed a contract very soon. The Phillies basically have a really good arm waiting in the wings, for Andrew Painter there.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily buy this. I don't see why they would have interest now if they didn't last year. If they didn't necessarily believe in the Snell way last year, when they really on paper had like 2.5 good starters. I mean, you knew what you had from Wheeler and Nola. You knew what you had from Ranger, but you only really saw the great out of him for sort of one season. And at that point, you didn't really have anyone else, and they still didn't really go hard for Snell. I just don't necessarily know what would have changed now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and just kind of taking a little more zoomed out view of the roster. starting pitching was not the issue this year. It really hasn't been during this period of Phillies ball. That like they've had pretty effective innings from all of their starters, with Nola and Wheeler obviously headlining things. It was the bullpen where things fell apart this year, as well as the issues with the at bats at the plate. So for me, this is pretty far down on the checklist of things that need to be prioritized. There's no doubt that there needs to be a shakeup within the organization and within this roster as a whole. But I do question if, like, when weighing what the cost would be versus what the actual impact on the team would be, it would be pretty surprising to me if they went all in on another big arm. I do like that Snell's a lefty. He's obviously got some really impressive stuff. You don't win 2 Cy Youngs by accident there. But I do question, like, when managing these assets, I don't think this is the best route to go, and kind of surprised to even hear their name in the mix here.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised. And obviously, I don't necessarily know, how true this is. Obviously,
Sure.
this is not like some sort of fake story for me. And Ant wouldn't do that. But this is also, sort of an off the record sort of guess. And I think Ant sort of touched on it. He said,
Yeah.
how much of this is real and how much of this is truly just like a guess? And maybe looking at a team that could use another starter and looking at a team that wants to truly go all in. But I will say there are a lot more teams, honestly, because I still think the Phillies have a top probably 3 rotation in the entire league from top to bottom. There are a lot of contenders that could use Blake Snell and should be way more desperate for Snell than the Phillies. I don't think the Phillies have any reason to be desperate for this kind of pitcher.
Yeah.
I don't think it would hurt. Once again, I think Blake Snell would only help you. But at the same time, this is sort of, to me, kind of like the Bregman thing that we talked about. It's not as severe as Bregman, but with Alex Bregman, you have Aiden Miller waiting in there. You
Yeah.
would look more for a rental. With the rotation, you have Wheeler, you have Nola, you have Sanchez, you almost have Painter, and then you still probably have Ranger, right? That's 5 starters. Obviously, I don't think you'll have all 5 of those guys out there on opening day. I don't think they'll be ready for Painter just yet, but I just don't know if I see necessarily the reason to go get one more huge starter. I think you could use that sort of money to really go get the bullpen going and sort of throw money at a 5 that can be sort of just like a 1-month thing for you until he's ready, Painter.
Yeah, it really sucks wherever we're having these pitching conversations that it's hard not for me to rewind and zoom back into what a disappointment Taijuan Walker is. That all
Yeah.
the issues would be solved if he just was what he was paid to be, and that is clearly not the case. Now, I don't want to be the hate on Taijuan Walker guy because by all accounts, he's an awesome locker room guy, a dude who personally is a really good human being there, and it's not a lack of effort thing that he's trying out there. He simply does not have the stuff that the team's requiring to have. But when kind of evaluating what's next for this Phillies team, it really hurts that that's the contract on the books, especially because that's the exact type of pitcher we're talking about. Just a guy that can eat up some innings, be a 5th starter, nothing more, nothing less. That's what they need, and that's what Taijuan Walker theoretically should be. It's tough to kind of deal with that and swallow that in my eyes. So with Ty specifically, how do you see things going this year? That the Phillies have talked about, they have a plan for him as far as a rehab process, that they want to get that arm speed back up and hopefully improve the velocity a little bit. I don't have the highest optimism that is the case, nor do I honestly think if you were to throw some truth serum into the system of a bunch of the Phillies personnel there, that they would really believe that either. So how do you think things play out for Taijuan this year?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think he's in a great spot. I don't really think that's really news for anybody. But I will say this, and I do want to touch sort of like you said on his character, because a lot of guys could have folded it in and
Pouted.
sat on the bench on the last spot on the bench in their hoodie and not said a word and just pouted, like you said. And Taijuan Walker was the first guy off the step every single inning in the playoffs.
Yep.
He went out for every start. He got thrown out there in September when they should have not had him out there. He should not have been on the field. It was obvious that he just didn't have it anymore that season. And he still went out there and he battled. And honest to God, he had the balls to get on the mic after some games and say that he felt great after he let up 7 runs in 3 innings. That takes a lot of balls for someone to say that.
Yeah.
And as far as his play going in the next year, he's going to have to earn the spot. They said that from the exit meetings. They said his spot is not guaranteed to anybody. He's going to have to earn it. They obviously have the plan in place. I don't necessarily think he will be quote unquote in the rotation next year. I think if there's a chance to maybe move on, it's going to be hard. Not a lot of teams are going to want this contract. It's going to be a trade where you probably have to put a prospect in it, sort of just to get rid of him. But I will say this: the dude's going to go to battle. He's going to be on the top step, and I do give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that overall, and it's disappointing that this is how things played out, but we also got to call a spade here and acknowledge that
Exactly.
probably is not good enough for what the Phillies need him to be moving forward, so got to adjust as is the case. Last question about Andrew Painter here. So we've seen a ton of success in the fall league. I think everyone is thrilled with the way that he looked on the mound, seeing some love from Dave Dombrowski himself. A bunch of other guys kind of chiming in, and from every report I've seen has been extremely positive based on how he pitched. How much does that change the calculation as far as things? I know you kind of touched on the Bregman-Miller conversation, which I do think there's an overlap here. But I guess the direct question is, at what stage of the season do you think we see him pop on the mound?
Yeah, and we've talked about this a lot. It's very much a guess right now because you don't know. He could come into spring training and he could look like the best pitcher in the organization. I don't think that would be the case. I think he's still going to need time. But I would say probably I've still been saying around May or June. I think you give him a few months to really ramp up. You ramp up this offseason. I mean, he looked fantastic. He's been really awesome. He is a unbelievable prospect. He's an unbelievable pitcher, and he already seems like he has the professional mantra to him. So I think you're going to see him earlier than I think some think, but I don't think it would be any earlier than May.
Okay, so that is the need to bring in a pitcher to some extent or to let Taijuan battle, whatever the case. So it will be interesting to see. I do think Blake Snell is a bigger swing than I would expect to be the case for this Phillies organization, but interesting that their names are in the mix. We are just starting to see the dominoes of the offseason fall, and it is nice that the Phillies are kind of in the mix of everything here. So we will see how things break down from here. There should be some more concrete reports coming soon and plenty of news surrounding this Phillies team. So tap in with us right here on Phillies Digest and smash that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you like the Blake Snell idea? Is that too much for a guy, based on the situation with this team? Let it fly below, and we'll be talking with you next time. Peace.